If your goal is to do this, then keep watching. Hey guys, my name is Zach Ferguson, and this channel is all about helping you guys reach your tricking goals. I may not be the best tricker, but hopefully my experience can help you guys become the best. This is a tutorial for a cartwheel. I'm making this tutorial as a supplementary video to last week's tutorial, which was a cart full twist. So if you haven't watched that video, go and watch it after this video so that you can see, once you have your cartwheel, one of the movements that you can do out of it if you would like. But I also wanted to make this video for the absolute beginners among us, because all of us started somewhere, and a lot of people are like, a cartwheel? You don't need a cartwheel tutorial, you just do it. But there's actually a lot of nuances to a cartwheel and a lot of different ways you can do a cartwheel depending on what you want to do out of your cartwheel and how you want to set up into your cartwheel, depending on if you are comboing or you're just going for power. So I'm gonna go over all of that in this tutorial. And there are a bunch of different ways to learn your cartwheel, but I'm just gonna go over one way in this tutorial because I have found that it is the easiest way to teach anyone without mats, without anything. You just need open space and an understanding of what to do with your hands and feet. So actually learning it is not going to take that long, hopefully. But after I show you how to do it, I'm going to go over the nuances, and I'm going to go over how to optimize it for either flips or for power twists or for turning it into a variation or for comboing and anything else you might need. Other than maybe a round kick and a hook kick, this is the very first beginner trick that I teach my students. So this is the first trick that I recommend that you guys learn if you are trying to get into this thing called tricking, or tumbling, or gymnastics, or acrobatics in general. A cartwheel is a universal skill. With all of that being said, let's get to the quick tutorial. All right, so what is a cartwheel? A cartwheel is a multitude of different things, but it is essentially a sideways falling motion where you land on one hand before the other and it rolls so that your hands touch in succession and then your feet touch in succession. Or it is a handstand where you touch one hand first and then you do a 180 half twist while you're pivoting on that hand, and then you put your foot down followed by the second foot. And I know you know what a cartwheel is, I just want to be descriptive so that you know exactly what it physically is. It's called a cartwheel because you look like the spokes of a wheel on a cart when you're doing it. And before we actually go into learning it, I want to make sure that you understand that there is no proper way to do a cartwheel. It all depends on your art form and your intention, or what you're doing into or out of your cartwheel. So make sure you understand that before I teach you this. I'm going to teach you a multitude of different reasons why you would want to do a cartwheel a specific different way. So if you're in gymnastics, they're going to tell you there is a proper specific way to do a cartwheel. Tumbling, same thing. Capoeira, same thing. For tricking or for general acrobatics, you want to be able to do cartwheels multiple different ways. So the easiest and most efficient way that I think that you should learn a cartwheel is the bear walk method. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to just start with your hands on the floor, placed down, completely still, with your hands completely open and flat. You don't want to do what I call wizard fingers, because if you push into the floor and you're going fast, you can hurt your wrists and your fingers. Just have them completely flat on the floor. You're going to be standing in a straddle, which means that your legs are wide apart, but your hips are still high up in the air and your legs are straight. It's helpful to do this on a line if you have some kind of line, but I purposely didn't do it on a line on this because I was wearing socks and I didn't want to slip and mess up on this. If you have a cross section of lines, that's even better because you want to be able to kind of jump over something and also be able to be on a line with your actual feet. But again, those are not necessary. You can just do this in grass or something. Something else to note is that I usually teach this with a panel mat or some kind of elevated surface for students because it gives them a visual to jump over something, because it'll help them keep their legs apart. But if you're learning this on YouTube, I think you have enough critical thinking skills to keep your legs apart. What you're gonna do is a small hop from side to side, from one leg to the other leg, just like you were doing a bear walk, but we are going to do it with our hands planted and we're not walking anywhere right now. From there, you wanna start turning your hips a little bit. What that's gonna do is make you land on one foot, say my right foot, and then my left foot is gonna start to swing around behind me. That's exactly what you want to happen right now. From there, you're gonna jump and do it on the other side. So you're just gonna swivel back and forth. Right now, make these super small swivels. Like this is just like easy peasy, sideways, there's no inversion, nothing. After that, you're gonna try and make sure that your legs are in line. So wherever your feet land, the other foot should land kind of directly right behind the other foot. Again, never moving those hands at this point. Keep doing this back and forth over and over and over again and just get used to this rhythm. If you fall down, just reset and do the bear walk again and get back to that rhythm until you can turn more and more and more. And then you can basically stop with your hands planted and you're kind of aligned so that one hand is in front of the other and one foot is in front of the other. If you get mixed up, the rule of thumb or the way that you know you're doing it correctly is if when you land, say you're on your right side, your right hand is closest to your right foot. If you land and your right hand is closest to your left foot, then you're not doing a cartwheel, you're doing something like a machine or a gorilla. So if you get mixed up, again, go back to the bear walk with your right hand next to your right foot and your left hand next to your left foot, and you just go back and forth and you always land with your right foot close to your right hand, left foot close to your left hand. Once you're comfortable with this motion, you want to start kicking backwards, not sideways. You want to make sure that you are kicking with your hamstrings with a straight leg. So you want to think about it as from your shoulder down to your heel is one muscle, not bending like this. It's going to be a lot harder on your arms at this point, so you want to go fast. Make sure your arms are as straight as possible. If you are bending your arms, you're actually putting more load on your muscles. If you are straightening your arms, it's more your skeleton doing the work. Spooky. At this point, we're still doing it on both sides, so make sure you kick your right leg back as hard as you can, and you kick your left leg back as hard as you can when you do it on the other side. Your goal is to invert now, so you're trying to get your hips over your head by kicking your leg backwards, landing on the leg that you kick backwards. So you basically kick backwards, turn, and then you kick towards your face and you land on the leg that you kicked backwards. So it kind of feels like the leg that you kick backwards does all of the work at this point. Once you can start inverting a little bit, what you want to do now is stand up just a little bit and place your hands before you do the motion. If you can do this, then you're basically doing a cartwheel. But for now, we're gonna keep doing it on both sides. If you need to start back from that bear walk position and do it with momentum and turn and turn and turn, and then when you land the foot, your chest comes up and then you go back down, place your hands where they were, and then do it on the other side, then that's totally fine. If you are comfortable enough now to do it from standing, then what you wanna do is just reach forward, place your hands, and kick backwards and do the cartwheel. If you got that down, what you want to start doing is straightening all of your extremities now. So you want to be really, really long. So you want to try to reach forward as far as possible from a lunge position and place those hands, keep those arms as strong as possible, kick that leg all the way over your head, and then land on the right leg, making sure that you keep your leg straight and then touch your left leg farther behind you than you think you need to. It kind of feels like you're taking a step back, or obviously landing on your left leg if you're doing it on the other side. And that's how to do a cartwheel. Like I said, this is the easiest method that I have found in terms of teaching people. I do it with long panel mats, I do it with a bunch of different methods, placing markers where you're supposed to put your feet, but I find this to be the most intuitive for beginners. From here, we're gonna go into optimizing it for your art form. So we're gonna start with tumbling because that is the most traditional or proper cartwheel. So for a tumbling or a gymnastics cartwheel, optimized for flipping, it is going to start from a really, really deep lunge. So now you only have to do it on your good side. You don't have to do it on bad side anymore. If you don't know which side is your good side, what you want to do is kind of just jump and do a 360. You literally just turn around. I twist to my left naturally, so that means I would put my left foot in front naturally. If for some reason you twist to the opposite side, so say I like stepping forward with my left foot, but I feel like I really want to twist to the right, then you're gonna have to figure out which one is more important to you. Because most trickers and gymnasts and people who tumble go to one side. You can absolutely learn things on both sides. It's just gonna take you longer to learn everything that way, and you might get confused as a beginner. So for now, I would recommend picking your dominant side or whatever feels the most comfortable when you're reaching forward into your cartwheel. So I'm just gonna teach this on my left side now because that's the way I go. So if you twist the other way, mirror my directions. So when you're in that lunge, what you wanna do is have your arms above your head as strong and as straight as possible, as if you are Atlas lifting the world, although he kind of does it like this. But if you're like an Olympic weightlifter or something and you have split feet and you're weightlifting and you're trying to be as straight as possible, you want to be in a deep lunge with your arms straight above your head. From there, you want to make your body a capital T. So you want your entire body to be one line except for the leg that you are standing on or kind of teeter-tottering over. So for me, I would be in this lunge and I would tee forward like this and try to keep my right leg up and as straight as possible, leaning forward, and then I do my cartwheel. You can go that slow, but if you're a super beginner, it might be really hard to do that. So just try to go relatively fast into your cartwheel forward while keeping that in mind to keep all of your limbs straight. So to be more something like this, you're just going into it and kicking and going. A proper tumbling or gymnastics cartwheel makes a complete 180. So you go forward towards your direction of momentum, you place one hand, and then you pivot 180 degrees so that you are facing the opposite direction, and then you land on the landing foot, which in my case would be my right leg, which is the leg that you kicked backwards at the beginning. When you do this, you'll know if you did it correctly, if you can balance and you can land in a lunge on the other leg. So I would land my lunge on my right leg with my left leg behind me and my arms above my head. It basically sets you up like you're gonna do another cartwheel, but on your bad side. From here, if you were gonna continue down the tumbling path, then you would want to learn your hurdle for tumbling, but I'm just gonna go over that in my round off tutorial so that this one's not too long. But the reason that this cartwheel is optimized for flipping is because you run forward or you just step forward and you have complete linear momentum going one direction, and then you end facing the opposite direction, but specifically all of your extremities go over your head, which gives you a lot of rotational energy backwards. So when your arms are up at the end, you have momentum pulling you upwards and backwards at the same time. So if you were doing a cartwheel and then you decided to do a backflip, all you would have to do is tuck your legs and you were pretty much already in your backflip by the time you stood up in your cartwheel. So now let's move on to optimizing for twisting power for tricking. So from here, what you're gonna wanna do is get your spin step. So before we actually do our spin step, what I like to do is I like to start from the end and then work to the beginning. So what you're gonna do is start with your feet together and then you're gonna take a step backwards. So you're gonna actually be facing away from your direction of momentum, and then you're gonna take a step backwards. From there, you're gonna pivot your hips so that you're facing your direction of momentum, and then you're gonna do a normal cartwheel like we did in the last step, just kind of over the top right now. From here, what you want to do is get fluid with the motion. So you step backwards and then you swing your arms over and do a regular cartwheel. What you want to do next depends on what you're trying to do out of it. So for example, you could be doing a cart dub. If you set really high with your chest, then you might want to just swing your arms to the side, because that's going to give you extra rotational energy. So for example, if I know I stand up really high out of my cartwheel naturally and I push off really hard because I keep my legs really straight, then I may not want to bring my arms all the way up. But if I'm doing something like a cart front, I need to get my arms straight over the top, or else I'm going to twist too much. So if I'm doing cart front, I'll go like this and face and then go straight over. So I'm trying to be like as Frankenstein, werewolf, traditional Halloween monster as possible. But if I'm optimizing for twisting, then I'm going to swing them sideways and not be as concerned about inversion as much, because my feet flipping over are still gonna make me go fast and flip my head upside down when I come out of my cartwheel just naturally. It all depends on how fluid you go and how much power you put into this. When we are doing this, it's important to note that you still pivot your hips and do sort of a proper cartwheel. The problem I see a lot of times is people will just go crazy sideways, like literally sideways, and that messes you up, because then when you land, your direction of momentum is going sideways. That's not actually what you want. If you're trying to do like dubs or any kind of twisting like fulls, then what you want is your back to your direction of momentum when you hit, and that blocks you up a little bit, and then you go for your twist. So you want to get your arms up after that, but you can watch my cart full tutorial and see all that and stuff. Anyway, that was sort of a tangent, but it was kind of necessary to get you to understand what you do after your cartwheel. Either way, what you're gonna do now is you're going to start not with your feet together, but with your leg that you're gonna step backwards with in front. So I would put my left leg in front, and then I would step backwards into this. So I'm gonna step all the way back and then do my cartwheel. This gets you used to keeping your legs wide and still going backwards when you're doing your spin step. After that, you wanna set up as if you were going to spin hook kick. So say I'm gonna hook kick with my left leg because that's my dominant hook kicking side. I am starting facing this way. I turn my entire hip so that my butt is facing this way, but I'm still looking here as if I was gonna do a spin hook. And then from here, that is where I do that step back. Boom, cartwheel. So it's literally step, step, cartwheel. And then you just gotta kind of run into it or step into that. So you start facing your direction of momentum, then you walk, take that step, step backwards, and then cartwheel. I hope that makes sense. That is your spin setup. You can do a spin setup from standing or running. So if you're doing it from running, all you're doing is you're running and then you decide, okay, now I'm gonna do my spin step. So I take my right leg and put it in front, and then I do my shift and I spin around and I step backwards and I do my cartwheel. Where people get messed up that I see is that they try to go like just spin in a circle to do a spin step, but then what that does is it makes their legs land really, really close together, and then they can't kick their leg back and they don't have much power at all. So then they just fall over and it looks like trash, or they don't get any height and they don't understand, and they're like, cartwheel's a stupid setup, it doesn't work. Make sure you keep your legs super wide when you're doing your spin setup, and make sure you understand that it is going in a direction and not just in a big circle. You're running forward and then you are spinning so that you are turning backwards, and then you're doing your cartwheel sideways and backwards so that you can do a flip or a twist. If you master a good spin setup into a cartwheel, then cart dub is not that difficult of a movement. I actually recently just did a challenge that's either gonna come out after this or it just came out before this, where I was trying to see how many cart dubs that myself and my intermediate class could do in 10 minutes. And the reason it wasn't that hard, even with a mask on, is because I had a solid spin setup into my cartwheel. So it was a really powerful setup, inverted me well, and then all I had to do was think twist as if I was on a trampoline or something. That leads me into optimizing for combos. So if you're optimizing for combos, what you wanna focus on the most is your legs kicking over quickly, like have a ton of speed in your cartwheel, because you might end up in different positions and you might not have that much momentum when you're going into your cartwheel if you're doing something like a really hard movement before your cartwheel. A cartwheel is usually like a safety setup to either recover or do a big power move out of. So say I do, a cheat 1080 and I throw the kick out, but I'm kind of off balance. If I then step really far backwards out of it and I'm kind of falling, but I remember kick really hard, then it can actually flip me back to standing really easily, and I could do a different trick that people wouldn't think of, or I could just do a cart full and recover and do more things later on in the combo that are harder because I used that cartwheel and I had a solid cartwheel, so I recovered my combo, if that makes sense. So specifically on this, it's gonna feel just like a spin setup, but I just want you to focus on understanding where your power comes from. So your power on your cartwheel comes from two places. It comes from your upper body shifting in a direction, which causes gravity to push it downwards. And then you're going to accelerate that downwards force by kicking backwards as hard as possible. So that's going to invert you as quickly as possible. And then you have these little pogo sticks keeping you away from the ground, which brings you back up to here, and then you have all this force going kind of that way, and then you can use that for whatever you want. So it's the shifting of your upper body followed by the kicking of your legs. If you just shift your upper body, you won't have as much power and you'll be all crumpled up. And if you just kick your legs without shifting your upper body, then you'll do it very in place. You'll probably reach down too much and not have a lot of power either. There are times when you want to do cartwheels in place where if you want to just keep your combo going but you're close to a wall or something, you could do that just for shock value or comboing so you can turn around. But do this intentionally. You shouldn't do this accidentally. The easiest way to optimize the feeling of comboing is just doing a hook kick to cartwheel. So you can do your spin hook kick, and then basically what you're gonna do is leave your chest over here and then cartwheel. That is very important, and it's something that I stress a lot in my classes because there's a difference between a crescent kick and a hook kick. If you crescent kick, then your body is gonna come with it, and then cartwheeling is gonna be slow because you're just doing a proper tumbling cartwheel and you won't have any extra spin in this. But if you do a hook kick and you do it properly and leave your chest over with a counter turn, then you can just do a cartwheel as if you were doing the spin setup. And then I just briefly wanted to touch on how to optimize for different movements. So if your goal is to do a cart side or something, you probably want to do a capoeira-esque cartwheel because that is going to make you land completely sideways. And then all you got to do is reach up and do a normal side flip. It's already setting you sideways. So that is a situation where capoeira cartwheel is actually a little bit easier if you want to do something like that. If you want to do something like a palm kick, then you'll want to learn how to do a left hand only and then a right hand only cartwheel. This is going to make you go a lot more sideways, and it's very awkward to learn at first, but it's very good for comboing into things like master scoot or very sideways setups. Learning how to stop in a handstand in your cartwheel is going to be paramount for things like L kick and getting used to 1990 and things like that. So experiment with your cartwheel. There's not one way to do it. Learning all the different ways is really good. Catch all the cartwheel variations. On to common mistakes. The first common mistake I see the most is people reaching straight down towards their own feet. The reason this is bad is because there is no leverage and there's no momentum gain forward before you kick your legs backwards. It's also bad because it can crunch you in a ball, and then it kind of like hurts your core and hurts your hips when you're trying to kick over. And if your legs are hurting a lot when you are doing this, then you're probably reaching straight down. What I would recommend is recording yourself on a profile view like this, so that you can see from the side how far you're reaching out. If you don't reach far away from yourself, even if you're doing a spin setup, then what you're doing is just reaching straight down and then spinning in a small circle like this, and you're not gaining any momentum. So if your cartwheel is hard, possibly you might be reaching straight down to the ground. The easiest way to remember this for me is I don't reach down to the ground, I touch the ground because I kick my leg. So what I mean by that is if I'm doing tumbling cartwheel, for example, I never let my arms go down. I just lock them there, and because I'm leaning forward and because I'm kicking my leg back, I touch the ground coincidentally. But this stops me from making this position here where I'm kind of in a push-up position sideways in the air. That is detrimental, bad, don't do that. You always want your arms here. Even if I'm doing a sideways setup, I kick myself over so that my arms are more above my head than they are in front of my chest. If I'm doing a sideways, inevitably they are going to be closer to my chest, but I still want them as high as possible above my head. Another very similar thing to that, but kind of opposite, is not splitting your legs apart enough. So if you reach really far, but your legs are really close together, you're gonna feel pains in your core and your hips also, because you're kind of just doing like a round off, but you never separated your feet. So focus on starting in a lunge. If I'm doing the spin step, I wanna focus on stepping way back behind myself. If I'm doing the tumbling cartwheel forward, then I wanna step really far in front of myself. All you gotta remember is if you're doing it on your left side, that you step your left leg really far away from your right leg, and then you keep them far away when you kick your legs over, especially when you're upside down, because then it's kind of collecting momentum as you come over. If you kick one up and then you bring the other to it and then you land, but you are kind of in like a V like this, instead of like a straight line when you come up, then you're just killing all your momentum. So don't reach down, don't step close to yourself. Both of those are gonna be super detrimental to your technique and not help you at all. Segueing off of that, it's how you kick. So the other common mistake I see is people, instead of kicking backwards, they kick sideways. This comes from either having a sideways cartwheel in childhood or being taught that way, or just not understanding because they think it's a sideways motion. So even if they start like this, they kick this way, like this, and then it just makes them go that way when their momentum is going this way. So it kind of just switches up everything, and then you just like don't have any power and you don't understand how people can do good cartwheels. This is also extremely important for aerials and butterfly kick motions, because if you kick sideways when you're supposed to kick backwards, you're gonna get no height whatsoever. Not only is your direction of momentum improper, but also lifting your legs sideways is a lot physically harder because you have a lot less muscle here and here pulling you up as you do with your backwards kick, because you have your entire back, your glutes, and your hamstrings, and your calves all pulling like this and flipping you over yourself when you do your cartwheel. So make sure you kick backwards and not sideways. Speaking of sideways, you might be doing your cartwheel too sideways for your goal. So if you're trying to do a cart front, but you always do cart full variations, you've probably slowly made your cartwheel more and more sideways, or never had a straight over cartwheel at all. It's a lot easier for me to do a tumbling cartwheel into cart front than it is for me to do a tricking cartwheel into cart front. I still like to know both because I want to be able to combo well into my cart front. So I do a spin step or sideways cartwheel into my cart front, but you have to remember to get your head up at the end and get a lot of flipping momentum, and also get your arms over the top at the beginning to gain more flipping momentum, because if you reach sideways and you land sideways and you have all this twisting momentum pulling you sideways and you try to go over, you're just gonna be pulled sideways with your hips. Vice versa on things like double legs. So when people come from tumbling or gymnastics and they try to do things like full double legs, they go too over the top for that. It's really hard to do a cartful D leg if your cartwheel is straight over the top, because you have all this momentum going this way. So when you do your full twist, your hips get above your head like immediately, and then when you D-leg, it actually comes over kind of sideways like this instead of up and over like it's supposed to. You want your chest to be kind of sideways and then pike over. And the last common mistake I see the most is not pulling with your back muscles to get your head up at the end like this. You guys need to train your back a ton if you're getting into tricking. Do Superman holds all the time, lift with your back muscles, do deadlifts if you can do them safely, train your back, make your back strong, because you use your back in like almost every trick in tricking, because you have to go from a flipping or inverted state to an upright state, and you have to use your back muscles to get your chest up almost all the time. But essentially what I see a lot is everything can be right. You can do an amazing cartwheel super fast, arms over the top or sideways or whatever you're trying to get. You're going like Mach 10, and then you land and your chest stays down here, so your feet are here, your hips are up, and then you try to go into whatever you're doing and you're 2 feet from the ground, go in Mach 10, and you just eat it really hard and you don't understand why. The reason why is because you need to stay stiff as you're coming down with that foot. So you want to land your foot and keep this back leg really strong so that once this touches the ground, your head is already up. It is a simultaneous motion, not a 1, 2. That's super important to remember. But that's about it, guys. I know this is probably kind of a long tutorial on cartwheel, but I like being in depth, and let's be real, I just don't make short tutorials. So I'd rather you guys have as much knowledge as possible on the movement so you can really master it and understand what to do with it, how to use it for other movements, and have a good base and understanding so that you can move forward. And I don't want to leave you with a bunch of questions at the end of the video. But I hope that helped you get or improve your cartwheel. If you do have any questions, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you're having trouble with, or if you want to see another trick or video from me. Please like the video if it helped you, and please subscribe to my channel to help me on my quest to 1,000 subs. And until next time, please stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys later.